Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. The Legacy of Phrecia event is just a couple of days away, and you might have noticed that I haven't put out a bunch of recommended builds or anything along those sorts of lines. There's a very good reason for that, and that is because we are expecting a balance pass. We don't know how substantial this balance pass is going to be. It could be that it's very minor, just targeting some of the extreme outliers like the Whisperer mana stacking shenanigans, or it could be that it's much more comprehensive. Once we've got that balance information, then I'll be able to put together a list of recommended starters. However, one thing I definitely want you to keep your eye on is the Herald Ascendancy and Herald of Agony. The reason I say this is that none of the items that are really important for this can ever be very expensive, at least just to get it going. There are some very top-end things you can farm for this that are much more expensive, but the Herald Ascendancy class, which is one of the Phrecia ascendancies, has a notable on it called Scourge. Scourge, if it is not changed, was completely and utterly busted. The way that Herald of Agony works, virulence is not something that just scales your damage once. It scales your flat damage, it also scales your percent increased damage, and it also scales your attack speed. Or not your personal attack speed, but the attack speed of your Agony Crawler, which is all the damage you're doing if you're playing a Herald of Agony build. So, with Scourge, you will do tremendously more damage. 25 maximum virulence would honestly be worth 8 points all on its own. If that was the only thing you got in this ascendancy, was just 6 virulence, 6 virulence, 6 virulence, and 7 virulence as a capstone, you would already be taking this ascendancy and it would be better than anything else you could take. However, on top of that, +3 to level of Herald skill gems, not quite as strong as it looks, but still is genuinely good. This makes it a lot easier to hit the level 29 breakpoint that's important with that skill. And also, 75 chaos resist is not a joke. Your 4th point, you've got a couple of options, but most likely you're going to go and look into a bloodline. I recommend checking out the Lycia bloodline, although you don't have to go that way. It will just give you some more options. So that's something to keep your eye on, but that is only if it survives the patch notes in its current form, which it wasn't particularly broken last time. It was just a very solid performer. So it's something that you might want to consider. But let's go back to basics. What is Legacy of Phrecia? Legacy of Phrecia is an event that is Path of Exile with 2 very big what-ifs. The first of these what-ifs is, what if the core 19 ascendancies that we know and mostly love, with the exception of 1 or 2 of them, what if they were replaced for a whole new set? So there are 3 new ascendancies for each class, and only 1 for the Scion, although the Scion's one is really, really interesting and honestly is a lot better than the Ascendant ascendancy that exists on the Scion normally. So there is a very large number of options, from things that are just straight up power performers, the Ancestral Commander, which at least the last time Phrecia ran, this was Juggernaut but better, the Paladin, which is kind of Champion but better, a little bit different, but pretty much it's Champion but better. Blind Prophet, which is the best projectile ascendancy available, the Whisperer, which is the absolute god tier mana stacker, the Herald we already mentioned, and a couple of zany things like the Architect of Chaos, which is just really fun. All of those ascendancies are being changed. On top of that, the Atlas tree that you know and definitely do love if you play Path of Exile 1 is completely removed and replaced with a different system that thematically is kind of like if you had jewels for your Atlas, but with a lot more complexity than that. These idols that you pick up, you're going to get one of them roughly 50% of the time when you kill a map boss. You'll also get them as, I wouldn't say rare drops when you're mapping, just uncommon drops when you're mapping. And that may be about the same rarity as a Chaos Orb or a Val Orb, that sort of range. You'll get them reasonably commonly while you're mapping, identify them, and sometimes they'll be really good. Some of the other ones are recombinator bait, because the only way you can modify these things is through the recombinator, and some of them are just going to end up being garbage. Yeah, Editing Gog here, just with a quick comment on POE 2-star recombination. This is something that's been added to the game since the last time Legacy of Phrecia was available, and whilst it's generally not something players use very much, it has a couple of niche uses in Path of Exile 1, but broadly speaking, people find the random recombinator to be stronger. That may not be the case with the Legacy of Phrecia idols. However, there's a very important thing we don't know the answer to, and that is some of the behind-the-scenes constants that are used in that recombination formula. Players have worked out how that recombination formula works, but There's a couple of constants that Grinding Gear Games pick for each particular item class, and we don't know what those constants are going to be for the types of idols. As a result, we can't yet say, but please do keep your eye on the possibility of using Legacy of Phrecia idols in conjunction with Path of Exile 2 style recombination. At least test it. You don't actually need to commit an attempt in order to learn what the percentages are going to be. And you make an informed decision before you spend any thaumaturgic dust, before you spend any gold, and before you throw any idols into the shredder as to whether or not it's something that's worthwhile. It really is going to come down to some of the nuances of the recombination formula, Path of Exile 2 style recombination formula, that haven't been worked out. So how do you use these things? Well, there is a very useful tool that's been put together called idleplanner.easyexile.tools. Link down in the description below. And this is a community website that's been set up. It's really useful for planning out an idle setup. Now, very important to note, this site is not yet updated. The operator of this site has said they are going to update it, but it is not yet updated. It has a couple of things on it that are definitely legacy. So there's breach-related idols that we know are not going to be in the 327 version of this event. There's also an old version of the Rogue Exiles modifier on the square idols. Idols come in 4 different flavors. They can take up 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, which there are none on this, but they're 3 vertical or 3 horizontal, or they can take up 4 squares, in which case they're always a 2x2. There is no 1x4. Each size has different mod pools, and the larger that the idol is, the less efficient that it is at providing you with the points that you can get on the small idols. But you start being able to get things you can't get anywhere else. Now, I put together a really trivial heist strategy here that for some reason I added delirium into. I probably shouldn't have done that. But anyways, the core of the heist setup is just that you've got Conqueror idols, 13 to 15, well, it's actually 10 to 15% chance for blueprints that drop in your maps to already be revealed, and percentage chance for smugglers' caches to have additional chance to contain blueprints for each smuggler's cache you've already opened in the map. Then a bunch of these heist clusters, which have 38% chance to contain a smuggler's cache and 30% chance to contain a second smuggler's cache. Editing log here. It's important to note the precise wording of some of the idols. The vast majority of idol mods, I think there are a couple of genuine exceptions to this, but the vast majority of them do not allow you to go more than 100% of that particular stat, or they'll allow you to go more than 100%, but it'll just be equivalent to having 100%. So for instance, if you have 3 of the nods that say 38% chance to have a smuggler's cache, that seems like 114%. Is that a guaranteed 1 and 14% chance for a second? No, it's just a guaranteed 1. You've got 100%, you don't get anything for that extra 14%. That extra 14% is wasted. There are, however, a couple of mods that deviate from this, and the mods that stack tend to be the ones that are found on the larger idol sizes. Although there's just a little bit of inconsistency there. Definitely just ask around about the specific mod you're curious about, because someone will have an authoritative answer on your particular mod, and it may not be what you think just from the plain English wording. So I think we have a total of 4 of those. That's all you can get. There's no more benefit than having 4 of those. In fact, 3 if they were perfectly rolled would be sufficient. And then after that, we've just filled it out with other complete and utter rubbish. That's a very, very basic setup. It's not something that's in any way optimized. And the site then lets you say, what map modifier should you use? Heist. What influence should you pursue? The Steering Exarch. You pursue the Steering Exarch just in order to get an invitation every 28 maps. What map should you do? Any tier 16, but probably actually beach. I think I've got beach there as well. What scarabs? No scarabs. Really, really basic setup. Anyways, the core thing that you'll notice here is that when you first get to maps, you won't have access to the idol system until you complete 1 map. Once you complete your first map, you'll then get access to a more limited version of the idol system, and there'll be a whole bunch of holes that you won't yet be able to access, but they'll have ways to unlock them. The hardest ones of those are the Voidstone bosses, and in addition to that, reaching 115 map completion. So once you've got all of that, you'll have everything unlocked on it, and at that point, you'll be able to fill in every single slot that's available. And just for clarification, the 2 corners and the H that you see there, they are completely impossible to unlock by any means. So you can fill in the other 32 squares on the grid, but those 10 squares are not able to be unlocked at all. Now, something that I think is a bit counterintuitive, but really, really true. It is really important in Phrecia to max out the amount of idols that you've got really quickly. The reason for this is that every idol is actually a bit of a multiplier to every strategy that you're running. So keep that in mind. It's kind of like the 6th link on your armor is worth more than the 5th link in many ways, because both of them provide a more multiplier, but the 6th link, even though the more multiplier might be smaller, or it might come with a little bit of a drawback, it's multiplying you from a higher starting point, and so it tends to add more DPS. You'll find the same sort of thing will apply with the idols. The later idols that you get will be of a lower average quality, but because they multiply with everything else, they'll end up making your entire strategy better. The one thing you should keep in mind is that early progression is weird in Phrecia. And when I'm talking early progression, I'm talking your pathway to getting all the tier 10 and lower maps done on the Atlas. So the period where you're not yet trying to optimize anything. In this setup, you're going to have a bunch of rare idols, and those rare idols are going to be a complete and utter mess that are just making your maps really juicy, but the juice is not going to be anything that you can really use well. So you're going to find there's going to be a lot more monsters than you're used to in each map. Those maps are going to feel chaotic, but they're not going to be massively rewarding. They'll be a little bit more rewarding than a normal map, but not massively so. And ultimately, you'll find that this will probably slow you down through the progress through yellow maps, and you'll end up taking longer to get to the point that you start running juicy maps than it takes you in a normal league. However, the experience is kind of going to be fun. During this period, there's a couple of mechanics you want to watch out for. Beyond is really, really deadly. And I'm saying this even if you're in softcore like I will be. You'll find that Beyond is just something that when you're not ready for it, it just tears you a new one quite often. Likewise, Einhar can be really unforgiving as well. So keep those two mechanics in mind. You can't really dodge them, and you might want to not use an idol if it's got one of those mechanics on it, unless you're stronger than you need to be in order to do the content you're running at the moment. Anyways, hopefully we'll have some patch notes to go through at some point in the next couple of days. Also, a little bit of a channel announcement. I am doing some part-time work at the moment. That's why you might have noticed that the channel has been quieter than usual lately. And additionally, my second channel, my side project, has been not on hiatus. It's not like I'm doing absolutely nothing for it, but it hasn't had an upload for a couple of weeks. And that's because I'm doing some paid work at the moment that we might have a little bit more to talk about later, because it is something ARPG related, although it is not anything related to Path of Exile. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and I will see you in the Legacy of Phrecia event.